Hello, namaste, and welcome to the third annual US-Nepal International Moot Court Competition. I am Dr. Waris Hussain, and it is my pleasure as the co-founder and as co-director of the competition to welcome you all today with this orientation. Now, before I begin with the oral round orientation for all of you, I want to take a moment to thank you. I want to thank all the competitors, all of the judges, all of the coaches, and in particular your professors that have helped you. It takes a great amount of dedication and passion that you've demonstrated as competitors for this competition already by submitting such wonderful memorials. And I want to express gratitude to you all for sticking with us, even though we're in a virtual format for this year. And I believe that we will make this a very valuable and enriching experience for all of you. But I do want to start off by thanking you for taking part in the competition as competitors and for your coaches taking time out of their busy schedules to assist you. We hope to make this an incredibly valuable experience for you, and we'll make sure that we ensure that that happens through the way in which we administer this third annual US-Nepal Moot Court Competition. So today what I'll be doing, other than just welcoming you to the competition, is to discuss a little bit about the oral rounds, how they're going to work, what timings they're going to be, what kind of preparation you should be doing technically and otherwise, and what future dates are coming up that you should be aware of. And then lastly, we're going to discuss opening statements that we have this year for the first time in the US-Nepal Moot Court Competition, where we will go through the rules as well as some of the best practices for recording your opening statements. So first, let's start off with the oral round timings, right? So we're going to have 4 preliminary rounds where all teams compete in the preliminary rounds. We will present twice for the applicant and twice for the respondent. So your oral round, the preliminary oral round, first one will be on March 18th at 8:30 a.m. in DC and 7:15 p.m. in Kathmandu. Preliminary round 2 will be on March 18th at 8:15 p.m. in Washington, D.C. and March 19th at 7 a.m. in Kathmandu. Then the third preliminary round will take place on March 19th at 8:30 a.m. for Washington, D.C. and at 7:15 p.m. in Kathmandu. And the last preliminary round will occur on March 19th at 8:15 p.m. in Washington, D.C. and March 20th at 7 a.m. in Kathmandu. The semifinal and final rounds will take place on March 20th at 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. respectively for the Washington, D.C. teams, and for 6:45 p.m. and 8:45 p.m. in Kathmandu. And the final round and closing ceremony will commence on March 20th at 8:15 p.m. in Washington, D.C., March 21st, 7 a.m. in Kathmandu. You will be receiving your specific pairings and scheduling coming up very soon, and you should look forward to that. But before we do that, I wanted to make sure that you know one thing, right? We want to ensure as a competition that we're providing all the technical assistance that you need to be able to be successful in this competition. This competition is not an assessment of your technical or technological capabilities. It's an assessment of your advocacy as an oral advocate and as a legal advocate through your memorials. And so we want to ensure that we're providing you with the enough assistance so that you're focusing on the important parts and you're letting us take care of the rest. So there's a few pre-competition tasks that you'll have to complete. And these are all tasks or events that we'll be holding in order to assist your teams, right? To make sure that you're focusing on that important bit, the advocacy and oral advocacy rounds. So first, on March 15th, we're going to have a technical orientation where the U.S. Embassy, who has gratefully, or graciously rather, is providing us assistance for the competition, is providing funding for the competition, along with the Department of Justice in the United States. But they're also providing us with experts, with technical expertise on how to use the platform that we'll be using. The platform we're using likely will be WebEx, but you will have assistance and orientation on March 15th at 2 times in the morning and in the evening, respectively, both for Washington, D.C. students as well as for students in Kathmandu or Nepal. And we'll provide time for you to discuss with the technical team any issues you may have and test out your WebEx as well during that preliminary or during that meeting that you're going to have. On March 15th, that same day, we'll also be sending you the schedules and match pairs for all of your teams so that you'll know which teams you're going up against and which sides you're presenting at which times. At that time, we'll also provide you, hopefully, I think that we'll be able to provide you with the links for your rooms. You'll be designated either in courtroom 1, 2, or 3 in every single round in the preliminary rounds. And you'll be provided instructions with the hyperlink as well on March 15th for each one of your rounds. Lastly, from March 15th to the 17th, you're going to record your your opening statements rather, and we will be providing you with assistance, and we will be recording between one of the co-directors for the competition as well as a tech assistant or a tech expert rather, from the US Embassy. They will be in your virtual room to help you record your opening statements. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but again, this is to assist you in providing as much technical assistance as we can to you during this process. So those are some pre-competition dates and tasks that are coming up relatively soon that you should be preparing for. Now let's go through really quickly, even though I want to do this quickly because this is all in your PDF that you should have received for the oral round rules. But we have the rubric, so I can walk you through the rubric where there's 100 points total that you can get, the judges can give you. You can get 20 points for the ability to answer questions. You can get up to 20 points for understanding of the law and facts, basic principles of international law, etc. You can get 20 points for the application of facts in the argument and in your oral presentation. You'll get 10 points or up to 10 points for the use of authority, legal authorities, international law, customary international law, and opinions of legal scholars. You will also get 10 points, up to 10 points for organizational flow of arguments, 10 points for reference to the memorial or the compromis, rather, so that if you're discussing the compromis and you cite 2 paragraph numbers, that will be up to 10 points that you can get rewarded for doing that. Then you get 5 points for your opening video, potentially, and up to 5 points for persuasiveness and creativity. So that's the grading rubric that you already have access to in your PDF that you've already received. You should review that PDF very carefully, but I wanted to walk through the rubric so you understand what the judges will be looking for in your competition. So now let's move to an important part of the competition, which is decorum, right? And let's take a step back, even back from decorum, and talk generally. This moot court competition, while being in a virtual format, is meant to train you just like a in-person moot court competition would be. So you should act in the virtual rooms just as you would act in an actual courtroom with an actual judge, or potentially in an in-person moot court room with the moot court judge and in a moot courtroom. So the objective here is, as much as possible, through any way you can, you should ensure that you're engaging in the competition in the virtual round just as you would in an in-person round. So that brings me to the first issue of decorum, right? Decorum for the courtroom includes showing up on time, or actually showing up before time. Because you may have technical issues that may come up, you are required, every team is required, that 10 minutes before their round begins, they should be in the courtroom. During that time, they'll be informing the bailiff of their time settings, how much time they're going to have for their opening statements recorded, how much time they'll be using for their arguments for question and answer session with the judges, and then finally, how much time they're reserved for rebuttal and surrebuttal. So you need to be in your room 10 minutes ahead of time in order to do that, and also check your microphone and your camera for the proceedings. If you cannot get into your room because of internet outage, electricity outage, or other issues, you will be able to, and you will have access to a number or a few numbers for the directors of the competition, or the co-directors of the competition, to get into contact with them or the technical team via WhatsApp or other other platforms to engage or let us know that there's a potential issue on your end, that you aren't able to get into the moot court room, and we'll provide you with a solution based on the problem as we see it. So you have that backup, and always have that backup, but before you get to that backup, you should be in that room 10 minutes ahead of time so that you can let us know if things aren't working, or if the link isn't working, or if you're not able to get into the room far enough ahead of time so that we know and we can help as soon as we can deploy technical resources to assist you. In addition to decorum, competitors, of course, should be in the room early so they can tell the bailiff, like I mentioned to you, what the time designations will be. That way the bailiff can keep your time, provide you with warnings for when your time is concluding, and I'll go through a little bit of that later. Secondly, or thirdly rather, as you see, especially in a virtual format, it's very important that if a judge is speaking, you remain completely silent. Crosstalk on a virtual format can become very confusing, both for the oralist as well as the judge. So it's particularly important that if the judge is speaking, you are completely silent. If a technical issue comes up when you are presenting, you should let the judge know if you can orally on camera through your microphone or in the chat function, where there's going to be an ability for you to chat to everyone in the room and let people know, or let the judges know immediately if you're having issues with connectivity or your camera or your microphone in the middle of your oral presentation. Let them know as soon as you can. And of course, one of the major issues, or not major issue, rather, one of the considerations to keep in mind is treat the virtual courtroom just like a real courtroom, right? So that means dressing the part. As an advocate, you should dress as you would in court. Addressing the judges with respect and deference, that's exactly how you should do it, just as you would do it in real life. Treat this whole experience as if we were doing it in person, even though there are definitely challenges and changes that we'll be engaging in due to the virtual format. But keep that in mind. Now let's move ahead and get to a very important issue, especially for a virtual format, which is the honor code that we'll be holding all competitors to. You have all been emailed the rules for the competition. You know the rules, you should know the rules for the competition, and you will be held under the honor code to abide and respect and follow all the rules listed in the moot court competition. Any violation of rules will be evaluated by the co-directors and the organizers of the competition, and will potentially lead to penalties or a potential disqualification based on the seriousness of the offense. We are holding you all to this standard because we know that in a virtual format, there's potential for taking advantage of certain systems or platforms, but we're impressing upon you that as young lawyers, that you're going to be held to an honor code just as a lawyer would be held to any honor code. So keep that in mind. Any oralist who's presenting should treat that presentation as an exclusive conversation for the judges, just as you would if you were standing at a lectern in a physical room in front of judges. That means you should not be searching on any web searches while you're doing your presentation. You should not be typing in any way, shape, or form while you present your argument before the judges, because you wouldn't do that in real life. So why would you do it in the virtual format? The same rules we're trying to apply. Now, that being said, you will have an of counsel table, essentially a virtual table, right? Where we're going to have the ability for you to be able to speak on a chat to your teammates. That function will only and can only be used for the team that is not speaking at that time. So let's take an example for a moment. Let's take a step back. Let's say that I'm applicant 1, okay? I have a co-agent who's applicant 2, and so I go up, right? I go up to present my case. Now, while I'm presenting my case, my co-agent or my of counsel should not be sending me any messages on the chat. I should not be communicating with them in any way. I should not be conducting any web searches to answer judges' questions or anything along those lines. The resources that I have in front of me are my roadmap that you will have access to while you're presenting, and that's it. You're not allowed to type, you're not allowed to do any of those things. So let's say I present, I don't have any of those problems, I don't talk to my co-agent, I just present my case, I sit down, my co-agent presents, I don't disturb them in any way, I don't try and discuss anything with them at that point in any way, and we both have seated ourselves, right? So we have the applicant presenting their case in chief. Now what we'll proceed to is the respondent will present their case in chief. So respondent 1 and respondent 2 will present their case in chief. And then after that, the applicant will present a rebuttal. Subsequent to that, there will be a surrebuttal from the respondent. Now, what's very important is that once applicant has concluded their argument and sat down, they have to prepare for their rebuttal. In that period, when the respondent is presenting, you are allowed to speak to your of counsel and to your co-agent through the chat function, and we'll be able to figure out a way for you to only chat to one person or 2 people in a room privately so that you can have a discussion with them on what your rebuttal should look like, what you would want to point out in that instance. So while you're speaking, while you're presenting your oral argument, you cannot speak to each other. Once you've sat down and you're waiting for the respondent, or if you're a respondent and you're waiting for the applicant to finish concluding your case, you can talk to one another through the chat function. We'll ensure that happens through the technical format. We're working with the technical team now, but keep in mind that it's just like a real courtroom. If you're standing up in front of the judge, you present your case, you're not allowed to take any notes or any kind of communication with your co-agent. You're there keyed in, directly engaging with the judges in the panel in front of you. You sit down, your co-agent presents, and then they sit down, and so you've rested your case until the respondent has concluded their case in chief. In that period, when you're waiting for them to finish, you can speak to one another on that chat. Okay, let's keep moving, okay? So let's talk about the most important question that we've had come up for many of you, which is the opening statement. Let me tell you why we're doing an opening statement, why we haven't done it before, right? If you've done the in-person competition, the first annual and second annual US Nepal Moot Court, or attended or in any way took part in it, you know that we didn't have recorded or pre-recorded opening statements. The reason we're doing pre-recorded opening statements is to ensure that no matter what kind of access you have to the internet, no matter how slow your internet is, and if it does give out during your presentation, even if that happens, we want to ensure that you have up to, as a ceiling, up to 5 minutes to present your case in a roadmap to the judges. And that video will not have any latency issues, will not have any playback issues, because it will be pre-recorded and the judges will have access to it and be able to easily watch it without any issues that relate to your internet connection as it may be. So the point of this is to equalize for everyone. So again, going back to what I mentioned earlier, this is not a question, or is not a competition testing how fast your internet is or how good you are as a tech expert. It's to assess how good you are as a legal advocate. And to do that while knowing that different teams may have different access to the internet and different internet speeds, we wanted to ensure that you have a chance to record and pre-record your opening statement, right? And then present that to the judges without any technical issues potentially happening. And then you'll have a question and answer session with the judges as well. So the whole point of the opening statement is just like the opening roadmap that you would have in your competition. It's to set out your argument in an engaging way, to set out potentially your theme, if you have a theme for your case, and lay out what you're going to be discussing in your part of the argument. So I've talked a lot about this and I've mentioned this, and we'll talk a little bit more about the nuts and bolts. But before I do that, let me do a sample opening statement for you. Now, my sample opening statement, you'll notice, is going to be about, let's say, maybe a minute, maybe a minute and a half. That's because as an oralist in the third annual US Nepal Moot Court competition, all of you are entitled up to 5 minutes for a pre-recorded video, up to. You can use less. And if you use less time in your pre-recorded video, then you can have that time added back to your argument or to your question and answer session with the judges, right? So make sure that you know that everyone has 40 minutes total for each side to present, including rebuttal for applicant and surrebuttal for respondent. You can use that time how you see fit. You must record or pre-record a video, and it can be as short as you want it to be, but it can be up to 5 minutes if you want it to be. So let's do a sample very quickly of a opening roadmap or an opening statement. I've borrowed this from one of my alumni, Ivy Brewer, who is one of the greatest oralists that we've had at the Howard University School of Law, and she competed in the Jessup competition in recent years. And I have her roadmap and reformulated it a little bit to have a presentation for you all today about what a roadmap looks like, or what an opening statement for your recorded opening statement should look like. So now let me get into my oralist shoes and give you a sample. So I'll take a moment to pause and then I'll begin my opening statement. Good afternoon, Your Excellencies. May it please the court. My name is Varas Hassan, and I am agent for the applicant, the Republic of Applicanta. My co-agent is Ms. Khatri, and our of counsel is Ms. Ginsburg. Today, I will be addressing the first two issues concerning the validity of the arbitral award and the legal issues related to the submarine egret. Ms. Khatri, my co-agent, will address the remaining two issues concerning nuclear disarmament and the use of force. My co-agent and I will both use 22 minutes each for our presentations, and we would like to reserve 1 minute for rebuttal. Your Excellencies, what we have before us today, before this noble and honorable tribunal, is the question of Applicanta's sovereignty, an attempt to solidify that sovereignty through what has happened in this case. As a developing nation, Applicanta cannot endure unsolicited external interference from any country threatening to impugn its sovereignty. I will discuss two main prayers for relief before this honorable tribunal today. First, the arbitral award from 2017 is invalid. Second, the respondent violated international law through his use of a submarine egret. For the first prayer for relief, I will rely on treaties including the UN Convention Against Corruption, as well as the International Law Commission's model rules to prove the 2017 arbitral award was not valid. For the second prayer for relief, I will discuss customary international law, the friendship treaty between applicanta and the respondent, and the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea to prove dispositively before this court that the submarine egret was not engaged in innocent passage and was in fact engaged in prejudicial activities in violation of international law. With this in mind, I will turn to my first submission in the question and answer session with your esteemed excellencies, and I welcome your questions. Thank you. Okay, so that's the opening statement. It can be as simple as that. You can add more to it if you'd like to. You can add sort of more of the sub-issues or some of the specific articles you might want to use from the treaties that you're referring to, or maybe specific references to customary international law that you're relying on. But that's pretty much how you're supposed to do your roadmap. It presents, or rather your opening statement, it presents a roadmap to the judges to know where are you going and where are you coming from, right? And why is this case so important? So, again, as I mentioned before, and I'll show you my screen really quickly, sorry, 1 second. If you don't use all of your 5 minutes, that time will be added back to your argument in chief, or for not your argument in chief, rather, I'm sorry, your question and answer session with the judges. So example 1, if both team oralists, applicant 1 and applicant 2, use 5 minutes for their pre-recorded statement each, right? So they've got 10 minutes of pre-recorded statement. That means they have 30 minutes remaining for their question and answer session and rebuttal, right? Example 2, let's say applicant 1 only uses 2.5 minutes, applicant 2 only uses 2.5 minutes. They used 5 minutes for their opening recorded statements. That means that only 5 minutes will be removed from their 40 minutes in total. That means they have 30 minutes remaining for their question and answer session and their rebuttal. Now let's go through the timekeeping because I want to make sure that this is very clear to you all. The opening videos plus the question and answer session for each oralist, plus the rebuttal or surrebuttal, all of that has to equal 40 minutes per side. 40 minutes per side, so keep that in mind. No one speaker can use more than 25 minutes, and that includes their opening statement and their rebuttal and surrebuttal. We want to see both oralists being able to represent their case and represent fully and robustly their case. And so we have a cap that you can't present more than 25 minutes for one oralist, including all of those things that I've mentioned to you before. So this answers the question that we had from one of the competitors, which was, asking us, what if we want to do a shorter video than 5 minutes? Totally fine, you can do that. And you will be entitled to use the remaining time that you don't use in your question and answer session and rebuttal or surrebuttal, whether you're applicant or respondent. So I hope that clarifies that question for you. Okay, now let's go to something that's inevitably going to happen, and we should all be ready for it. It's okay. Take a deep breath. It's going to be okay. But there will be technical difficulties. It happens. There's no way around it, and that's okay. If there are technical difficulties during an oralist presentation, they should inform the judges immediately, either vocally or through the chat function. And we will have in each room a bailiff, a technical assistant, and a competition director, or rather co-director, in the room who will provide any assistance that's needed for the competitors, okay? So keep in mind that we know that technical difficulties will happen. This will not be held against you, okay? We'll make sure that we get you back online, and we make sure we get your mic or camera working if there's an issue with that, and that time will be stopped. So you see this icon here. We will be stopping time for any technical difficulties that take place. We will not hold your internet capacity against you, right? So keep in mind that the time will be stopped if there's any issue connection for the oralist, and we have a cap of around 30 minutes for us to try and get you back online and get the round back in function. If the round can't get back on function for one side or for both sides, then the co-director in the room will make a decision whether to conclude the entire argument or conclude one side of the argument. Now we know that there's going to be technical issues that come up, like I mentioned, but we're going to make sure that you don't have to pay for those, and we're going to stop the time as soon as we can. The bailiff knows, and each room will have a bailiff that knows to stop the time for any technical difficulties, and we will try and resolve any issues that happen thereafter. Okay, so now let's go back to the opening statement. I don't want to keep harping on it, but it's an important part. It's a new part of this competition, so I want to let you know one very important thing, okay? That important thing is that I performed that opening statement and I could have made a mistake, right? You may, not will, you may make a mistake while you're recording your statements. And the statements will be recorded in the presence of a co-director from the competition, as well as a technical assistant from the US Embassy. So what I want to let you know is that you have 3 chances. Each oralist for each side has 3 chances to record their opening statement. Okay, so applicant 1 has 3 chances, applicant 2 has 3 chances, respondent 1 has 3 chances, respondent 2 has 3 chances. If you have 4 members on your team, each one of you get 3 chances. If you have 2 members on your team doing both sides of the argument, good luck. And also, you'll be able to have three attempts on both the applicant side and the respondent side. The reason we're doing this, of course, is to give you a fair shot. We're going to give everyone the same fair shot. And by the way, if you want to just go with your first take and you don't want to re-record your statement, then you will have the ability to do that. But if you want a chance to re-record, we will give you up to 3 chances to record your statement. But let's move ahead to scheduling now, right? Because that's an important part of what's going to happen. From March 15th to the 17th, the co-directors will be working with your team liaisons, your team captain or your coach, to set up a time to record the opening statement in the presence, again, of a co-director of the competition, as well as a technical assistant for the competition. In this period, you'll also be provided an orientation to the WebEx platform, and you'll be able to use that platform and play around with it in the presence of a technical assistant as well. And that will prepare you to be ready to go on March 18th when our first rounds begin. Each oralist, as I mentioned, will be given 3 attempts to record each side of the argument, or each part of the argument when there's 2 parts. And again, like I mentioned, there's going to be an opportunity to test the WebEx platform. All of this will take place on March 15th to the 17th. And your team coaches or liaisons should reach out to the co-directors relatively soon to figure out a time when you can record this. Now, the competition, we've left it open. So if students want to congregate in their schools and do their opening statements and do the competition itself, you are more than welcome to do it. But if you have limitations, such as Howard University, we have certain limitations as well for the team, and the coach that's running that team is also discussing with them how to engage in the virtual format. But we're allowing for you to connect from your home or connect from your school. You can connect as an individual or you can connect as a group, right? The same thing applies for your opening statement. If you want to come together as a team and your school allows for that to do the recording of your opening statements, you are more than welcome to do that. If you want to do them individually in the same time block from your homes, then as long as it's in the same time block and you don't, and rather you coordinate with our co-director and you coordinate with our technical assistant, then you can do it either way. And the same thing applies for the competition. If each of your team members wants to stay home and has a stable internet connection, or your school doesn't allow you, your school doesn't allow you to come together in a personal or in a physical format, then you're more than welcome to take part from your respective homes. But if you want to come together, you can do that as well. There's nothing stopping you in either instance. I hope that answers most of the questions that you may have. Of course, keep in mind that we're going to have a technical orientation that we're going to be emailing you all about on March 15th. We'll have a chance to talk to our technical team. And in addition to that, you'll also have a chance to record your pre-recorded opening statements for the competition. Once again, I really wanted to thank all the competitors, all the coaches, all of the professors who are assisting, as well as the US Embassy and the US Department of Justice, who has so graciously funded and assisted us in this project to maintain it and keep it going. So 3rd annual US Nepal Moot Court competition will begin, as I said, according to the time schedule that you'll receive, that you have already and that you'll receive for this specific scheduling and pairing. The preliminary rounds will be held, like I discussed earlier on, and in that slide, and you can refer to that, but you'll also be getting your time designations and your pairings on March 15th. So Best of luck to all the teams. If you have any subsequent questions, feel free to email me, Varis Hussain, who's co-director for the competition, Sudeep or Shishir Dai. You can contact them as well. And we very much look forward to your taking part in the competition. And we are very excited to host the virtual format of this competition for this year. So good luck, and I will see you soon.